Hello and welcome to Buy Wood or Knit and Fiber. My name is Caitlin and this is a space where I share my making, primarily knitting, but also spinning, sewing, crochet, and any other crafty things I decide to try. Thank you so much for joining me. I have quite a bit to talk about today, so I'm just gonna jump right in. Starting with finished objects, the first is one that you have seen before, but I finally made my decision for buttons on my Maggie vest. So this is the Maggie vest by Susan Crawford. It is a Fair Isle vest that you knit in the round and steek. I did talk about this in my first video, so if you want more information on that, you can check out that video. When I last spoke about it, I had not put any buttons on yet. The pattern calls for snaps with then buttons just sewn on top. I was going back and forth on whether I wanted to do the snaps or if I just wanted to sew the button placket closed. And that's what I ended up doing, just sewing it closed, because I don't think I would ever wear it open if you could see the snaps on the placket. So I just sewed it closed, used some ceramic buttons that I got at Maryland Sheep and Wool, and I'm really happy with it. I actually got this yarn at Maryland Sheep and Wool too, and I had not intended to use these buttons with this pattern, but when I was going through my button stash, these just looked so nice with it. So it's a nice little memory of my time at Maryland Sheep and Wool this year. So yes, that is my Maggie vest. The next finished object is also a vest. This is the Audrey and Unst vest by Gudrun Johnston. I knit this in Brooklyn Tweed Loft in the colorway Fauna. I had this yarn for a very long time. I got it in one of their warehouse sales years ago. And I used it in one other project. I held this color with a strand of Artifact, also Brooklyn Tweed Loft, to make a cardigan. But I had quite a bit left over, so it actually ended up being just enough for this vest. So it is knit with fingering weight yarn. You do knit it flat and then pick up for the neckband, armband, and button bands. I did not add my buttons yet. I did finally decide which ones I'm going to use, so hopefully in the next few days I will sew the buttons on. That's always something I put off doing. I don't enjoy sewing buttons onto my knits, but I do really want to wear this. And this lace, the Unst lace pattern, is so simple. I am not usually a lace knitter, and I have a really difficult time memorizing lace patterns for some reason. They just do not stick in my brain. But this one was extremely simple. It almost gives like a little bit of a granny square, granny stripe vibe. And I'm debating on trying to make a shawl with this lace patterning all over it. So I need to think about how I would do that, what shape shawl I would want, but I really, really like the way this looks. So that is my Audrey and Unst. That is the only finished object I have. I know last time when I was talking about my future plans, I said I did not have any plans to cast on more garments until I finished a few things on my needles. But then the weather got a little bit cooler briefly. We're back in the 80s again now. but I just could not resist casting on another sweater. So I will show you that. This sweater is the Care pattern. I believe I'm saying that right, Kerr, Care, by Rebecca Clow of the Crayabea. And it is a drop shoulder construction with a colorwork band in the center of the body and also on the sleeves. I will put a picture up of what it looks like finished. So I am just working my way through the colorwork right now. I'm about halfway done. She has two different options for the colorwork. You can do a thinner band or a wider band, and I'm going with the wider band. And it's really pretty. The yarn I'm using is Plotulopi. The bane color is Dark Woods, which is one of my favorite colorways of Plotulopi. It's like a mix of browns, grays, beige, little specks of like rusty orange. It's so beautiful. And then the contrast color is Ivory Beige, which is another really beautiful neutral. And I am just holding it single. The pattern calls for a DK weight yarn, I believe, and Plotulopi is classified as a DK weight if I'm not mistaken. So I had no problem getting gauge with one strand of Plotulopi. And the needle size I am using is a US 6 or 4 millimeter. I am making the size 5, I believe. On Rebecca's pattern page, there's one picture, and I will insert it, where there's several different people wearing the Care sweater, and she is in the back, and it's hard to see, but it looks like she's wearing a very oversized version, and I just loved the way that looked. So I decided to size up a little bit to try and get that same look for mine. It's not looking as big as I expected on the needles, but I'm hoping that once I block it, it will be super oversized and cozy. So yeah, I'm just working my way through that. And this is going really fast. I actually don't really like knitting drop shoulders from the top down. I prefer a bottom up drop shoulder. I don't know why. I think it's just because I really am not a big fan of picking up stitches. And so as I get each piece knit and at this top part, because you start with the back usually and you knit like a trapezoid shape, and then you pick up stitches at the shoulders and knit the two front pieces. And every time I get to a point where I need to pick up stitches, I just stall. But I'm past that now. We're in the round, joined in the round, and knitting the fun part. So this is going pretty quickly. All right. The next project that I've been working on is my Gertrude vest by Susan Crawford. And it is in her book, Echoes, which is published by Lina. It's really a beautiful book. There's a few other patterns in here that I am really looking forward to casting on in the future. But this is the pattern that I'm working on now, the Gertrude vest, and I am using colors pretty similar to what Susan Crawford used in this sample. And I have finished the body. So I finished this last night, actually. Sorry, the hem is rolling a lot right now. So yeah, I finished the body last night. So now I have to separate for the front and back and add in the steek stitches, and I'm really pleased with how this is looking. It actually looks super nice on camera. I did stall a little bit on this as well because as I was knitting this large motif, I got about halfway through and just was really uncertain about the colors. I felt like the blue was a little bit too dark for the background and that it was sort of muddying the design. But I decided to finish the motif and see how I liked it. And it's definitely growing on me. I think as a whole, it works really well. So I did debate ripping back and replacing the blue with this beige and just keeping it the same, but I am liking it now. And picking colors for Fair Isle is an art form in and of itself. I mean, I used very similar colors to what Susan Crawford used in her sample, and it's still looking completely different. So that's something I'm going to have to just keep playing with and experimenting with, how to pick colors for the different Fair Isle motifs. But I do like this so far. And this is the only reason I haven't gotten farther is because I stalled on this motif, but it is flying off the needles. And then the back is just that 1x1 color work. So yeah, I do have a few more smaller projects that I've been working on. I have been plugging away at my socks for my mom. So these are just a pair of vanilla socks that I'm knitting in West Yorkshire Spinner's Signature 4-ply in the green woodpecker color. And this is the second sock. I finished the first one. I am doing the gusset decreases on the second one. And then this shouldn't take too much longer. I'm hoping to get these to her within hopefully the next few weeks. All right, the last two projects I've been working on are gifts also. So my husband is a big fan of RuneScape, and he requested that I make him a wise old man figurine. Figurine's not the right word, stuffy. I will put a picture of the wise old man from RuneScape. So what I decided to do is use this pattern as a base. So this is the, I apologize, I'm probably going to butcher it, Kurtasnikir by Helene Magnusson. And this is one of the Icelandic Yule lads. I believe the translation is candle beggar, which is why he has a little candle. I knit this last Christmas, and I actually used him as my tree topper, but I couldn't bear the thought of putting him away, so he now sits in my kitchen. But I thought this would be a really good base pattern for the wise old man. So I'm using it just to do the body, and then the instructions for like the face and the beard. But I am going to be just sort of self-drafting his robe and his cape and hat. It's not really a hat, it's a crown. But so far I have knit his two arms, and I am working on his body. You do a provisional cast on, work some short rows, and then knit up for the top half of his body, and then you put your stitches back on the needle and knit his legs down. So it doesn't look like much, but it will be a wise old man. And the yarn I'm using for his body is Let Lopi in the color Straw, which is the same as I used for the face and hands on this one. This is a little slow going just because it is knit at a fairly dense gauge and it's a little bit hard on my hands, so I'm just taking my time with this. And then the yarn that I'm going to use for his robe is this green yarn that I dyed a few years ago. All right. And the last project that I'm working on was one that I talked about starting in my last video. So this is, it's going to be really hard to show in the state that it's in. But this is the Ratty pattern by Claire Garland. So I have knit the body of the rat. I'm sorry, this is not easy to show. But I've knit the body. I have to seam it up and stuff it and then knit the clothes. Looking at it now, I might need to block it before I seam it because it is really just curling up all over the place. This is for my sister's boyfriend. She requested that I make a little rat keychain for him, and then she wants the clothes to be similar to one of his favorite shirts. So I got some mohair from Valley Yarns, which is the Webs brand. This one I had left over from another project and I don't remember the color. I'll see if I can find it and I'll put it below, but it's like a dusty pink. And then this is color 003. It's like a limey green. So these two colors will be the shirt. And then I got just a navy blue. The color is 041 for his pants. So I'm gonna hopefully seam this up soon, get to work on the clothes, and then I need to find a good keychain to attach. Oh, I need to do that before I seam it up. I should order that so I can figure out how I'm gonna do that. But once I figure that out, I will take some pictures of how I do it so that if anyone else is interested in making little stuffies into a keychain, you can use it as a reference. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned the yarn. This is Einband by Istex. I think the colorway is Pecan Heather. It's either pecan or almond, but it's just some scraps I had left over from a project that I made years ago. So I no longer have the ball band. All right. That is all of the crafting I have to talk about today. But I figured, I had mentioned last time that I was considering doing some book talk, and a few people did seem interested in that, so I figured I would talk a little bit about a couple of the books that I recently finished and what I'm reading now. So two books that I finished recently that I really enjoyed are The Briar Book of the Dead by A.G. Slatter and The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. The Briar Book of the Dead is a standalone novel, but it's set in the same world as the author's other novels. So this one, there's currently 4 novels released in this world, and this is the 3rd. And even though they're standalone, there are references to some of the characters and events that happen in previous books. So if you are interested in reading them, I would recommend reading them in order. The Briar Book of the Dead is the third of her more recently released novels. And it is, it follows the story of this family of witches, and the main character that you're following is the first of her family who was born without magic. So it sort of follows her journey in figuring out what her role is in this family and this community. And I really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed all of the books I've read of A.G. Slatter so far. I would say the first 3 of the novels within this universe were probably my favorite. The most recent one, which is The Crimson Road, I believe it was called. I enjoyed it, but it was definitely my least favorite of the 4. The other 2 are All the Murmuring Bones and The Path of Thorns. So those first 3 I highly recommend. The 4th one is still enjoyable, but it felt like less of its own story and more of an excuse to kind of like visit some of the characters from previous books and see what they're up to. So I just didn't enjoy it quite as much. Like, it's nice to see what characters that you really liked are doing now, but the story itself felt more like an excuse to do that than its own story, if that makes sense. And then The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia, I really enjoyed. It's another witchy book, great for this time of year. And it follows 3 different stories. So there are 3 different points of view throughout the novel. One, I guess you would say the main one, takes place in present day New England in a university town. And then the other 2 points of view are the main character's, I believe it's her great-grandmother, when she was like a teenager in Mexico. And then the other point of view is of an author who the main character is studying for her dissertation. And that takes place in, I think, the 1930s in the same university town that the main character is in. And the story just follows, there's a series of disappearances, and each timeline talks about the disappearance, and you sort of see how they're interconnected with each other. I don't know if that explanation makes sense at all, but it was really enjoyable, especially for the spooky season. If you are looking for a nice, spooky, witchy book to read, I highly recommend The Bewitching. All right, and then what I'm reading now. So I'm reading 2 books right now. The first is called The Hounding by Zenobi Purvis. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I'm just going to read a brief description from the cover. It says, "The Crucible meets the Virgin Suicides in this haunting debut about 5 sisters in a small village in 18th century England whose neighbors are convinced they're turning into dogs." I'm really enjoying this, but I have to read it like a little bit at a time because it's making me angry. Not like just the villagers' reactions to these 5 girls. It's making me angry. Which, like, I don't know if that's what the author was going for, but yeah, I don't know how to describe it without giving away what's happening in the story. but it really is like you're seeing the perspective of the girls, but also the perspective of the villagers. So you're getting to know the girls, how they view themselves, and you're getting to see them in their home and interacting with each other. But then you see the points of view of the villagers, and it is so different than what you're seeing when you're seeing the girls' point of view. I don't know if that's making any sense, but yes, I am really enjoying it. The cover's also just beautiful. But it's making me mad, so I'm reading it a little bit at a time. And then the other book I'm reading is the second book in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. This one is Royal Assassin. I'm really loving this series. It is a little bit slower paced in a good way. I really enjoy stories that take time to unfold, and this is doing that. You really get a good sense of who the characters are and what their motivations are. She also, the way that the book is written, it's written in first person, but the beginning of each chapter has an excerpt from what it reads as a history book. So you get like little bits and pieces. It's almost like you'll get a little mini biography of one of the characters, or you'll get a brief synopsis of an event that happens in the timeline of this book. And it's a really interesting way of giving really important information to the story, but in a quick way that doesn't like draw out the story too much. I don't normally talk about books with people. I just think about them in my head, so I feel like my thoughts are coming out very jumbled. But hopefully as I talk more about books, it'll become more natural and will make more sense. But yes, this is just a nice classic fantasy series, a little bit of a slower pace, but in a really enjoyable way. Like you're never like, oh, I can't wait to get through this chapter so I can see what happens next. It really is enjoyable. Every chapter I've enjoyed so far. And I really like the style or the format of having that little excerpt of history and then getting back into the story. So yeah, that is what I'm currently reading. I do have 2 books I am hoping to start in October because they seem like they will be good spooky season books. One is called Slewfoot. I forget the author, but I'll put it below. And the other one is called Woodward, I believe. Let me get it. I do have them both. A little dusty. All right, so Slewfoot, A Tale of Bewitchery by Brom. It just says Brom. I don't know if the author has... No, it's just Brom. So it says, an ancient spirit awakens in a dark wood. The wild folk call him Father, Slayer, Protector. The colonists call him Slewfoot, Demon, Devil. So yes, I'm hoping to read this in October. And then the other is called Woodworm by Layla Martinez. And I got this I got all of these at my local bookstore, Pocket Books. But they had there was Um, they had they had a display, that's the word, of books, foreign language books translated by women, and this was one of them. So it is translated by Sophie Hughes and Annie McDermott. And the cover is just beautiful. That's what drew me in. And the description says, the house breathes, the house holds bodies and secrets. The house is visited by ghosts, by angels that line the roof like insects, and by saints that burn the bed sheets with their halos. And it says, it's an eerie debut novel about a class-conscious horror that drags generations of monsters into the sun. So I am looking forward to starting both of these books in October. All right, so that's all I have to talk about today. I'm hoping it won't be quite as long between videos. I ended up getting a little bit sick, and so I just was not feeling up to recording anything. But I am looking forward to working on all of my fall knits, and I have a few other projects that I would like to cast on in the next few weeks. So hopefully I can share more about that next time. I also just ordered a serger. I had been hemming and hawing about getting a serger for years now, and I finally decided to just go for it. So that is on its way, and I think it's going to increase my sewing motivation. So I may have a few sewing projects to share next time as well. Thank you again so much for joining me. I really enjoy reading all of your comments and seeing what everyone else is working on. If you have any pattern recommendations or book recommendations, please feel free to leave them below. I'm always looking, especially for new book recommendations. So thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.